I guess before we jump to, actually, that's fine. We can talk through it as part of the mainnet check-in.
Well, go ahead and check the box here for start recording, so we can just go straight to that now. What did you want to say, Walker?
Nothing. Well, I guess two things. One is I wanted to check in on the state of the develop branch and whether we are ready to build a new release that people can run, because I think there are several useful fixes that have gone into that. And then the second was Jude, from you, just wanted to hear kind of how your testing has been going with the different values for the wait for microblocks time setting, and if there is something that we should broadcast more broadly to the miners, if it's going to be a helpful default, or maybe even change the defaults.
Okay, so yeah, I was testing. So just some background for the people on the call. One thing I've been investigating on the Foundations miner recently is how good of a job, just by fiddling with the default settings, can we do to make it so that the miner always hits each block it tries to mine in, as opposed to having their block commit bumped by a block. One of the single biggest impact things we can do here is to set the wait time for microblocks setting to something small, like on the order of 30,000 milliseconds, or just 30 seconds. I think it defaults something like 5 minutes or something crazy like that. What this means is that your commits should happen pretty quickly. Like the node will wait no more than 30 seconds for microblocks before sending its first block commit transaction to the Bitcoin mempool. In testing this, it works pretty well. The Foundations miner is able to, get 15, 20 blocks in a row. By that I mean like each block commit it sends lands in the next block, like for a number of times without any issues. But to Walker, there is one other issue that's maybe in the project board we can talk about, and that is if there's a fast Bitcoin block that arrives that causes the no UTXOs for public key message to be emitted, that can throw the node into a tizzy. Like it will continuously miss block commits by exactly one block until it manages to recover some number of blocks later. I think we should try to get that fixed.
Yeah, and this is, you were testing with Ludo's PR in your build.
I was testing with and without. We should talk more about Ludo's PR because it actually doesn't work. It makes it so that you underestimate the replace by fee. If you use the actual transaction length, which is what we were doing before, I've never seen that problem arise.
Okay, we can maybe talk about that when we go through the board.
Yeah.
Okay.
I could talk a little bit about like whether we could cut a release in general for the develop branch with the workflow. We should be able to use the same workflow, the same GitHub workflow to do that. But it will like create a GitHub release, just like if we were to do it on master. So it's gonna look big, and we're probably going to want to tag it like 2.0.3-testnet developer.
Oh, that's fine. I wasn't suggesting that this is sort of a release that we will cut from the developer branch. I meant that actually tag a release, so merge to master version, go through the.
Oh, okay. I got you.
Yeah. All right. Should we switch to the board?
Sounds good. Let's take a look at reviews. Reed, you want to talk a little bit about this PR?
Yeah, sure. So this was some testing that I'd been working on kind of pre-mainnet launch that I was able to, or kind of more recently, I gathered everything into a single PR. And the idea was to test, kind of do integration tests with blocks that were pretty full, so like nearing the block limit, with transactions that had kind of more expensive computation, so contract call, that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's not too much in here. It should be a simple review.
Cool. I'll go ahead and take a look at it this afternoon. Walker, you want to talk about this a bit? Do you want more reviewer or?
Sorry, which one? Oh, Oh, no, I mean, if it's ready to merge, I'm happy to just merge it in. It's very mechanical change.
We should find out what the tests are failing though.
The last I checked, they weren't, or at least I couldn't isolate. I'm happy to take a look at that, make sure tests look clean. If there's
Okay.
anything that's, we think is because of this PR.
Is Friedger on the call?
I don't,
I don't think so. For those of you on the call who've been participating in mining, we discovered and Friedger reported a fix here for an issue that was causing the smoothing window that we apply to miners to not work correctly. Just a bit of background on why that smoothing window exists. It just makes it so that there's a high barrier to entry for miners who also stack to get discounts by mining, as in by mining only when their reward addresses are up. Because if they can do that with impunity, then it means they can basically mine for free. They just muster all the Bitcoin they possibly can, send it to their own reward address and get it back, and then win the sortition. The smoothing window makes that very difficult to do because it means that you have to commit that much Bitcoin for the majority of the last 6 blocks, which if you doesn't stop discount mining, but it does make it so you need that much more stacks to be able to do it. There's actually a bug in this code that enforces this window that causes a missed block commit. So a block commit that gets bumped into the next Bitcoin block. What should be happening is that the missed block commit shouldn't affect your average of minimum and median burn rate, which is what the weight is in the sortition function. But the calculation of which, of whether or not a particular block commit is late and thus should count towards that mean of min and median, the calculation is broken. It's causing all block commits that miss to just not be counted at all. This PR that Friedger sent would fix this, but unfortunately applying it would create a hard fork because it changes the way in which sortition weights are calculated. We could do this for Stacks 2.1, and we probably should. So we can just go ahead and take a look at that and maybe just slate it for the 2.1 release. I'm just moving on here. Feature, do not mind while node is initially syncing stacks blocks. Aaron, do you want to comment on this?
I don't think Aaron's here yet.
Okay.
So maybe you can summarize the discussion from Friday.
Sure. So I think the gist of it is, well, obviously there is a bug in the miner right now that will cause the miner to start trying to mine blocks while your node is booting up. That's clearly undesirable because it will mine an orphan block if it does this. So what Aaron's been working on is a way to make it so that doesn't happen. And I think the place where we're at right now is if you just pass the target stack's height at which the miner should start mining as a command line option, it should be sufficient. Because then you can pass in a height that's in the future, like if you want to start mining tomorrow or something, when your node's booting today. You can also pull in the current stacks block height this way just by doing a shell substitution with curl. So you can curl v2 info for something, for some node that you trust, and extract its block height from there, and then pass that block height in. And I think we're almost good to go on this. I think we're just waiting for one more reviewer.
Yeah, this happened to a miner on Friday, where he mined like blocks, like hundreds of blocks in the past.
Yeah, it's clearly undesirable behavior. So this fix should go a long way to making that unlikely to happen.
Yeah.
Oh, there's Aaron. Hey, Aaron.
Hey, how's it going?
We were just talking about your PR, about not mining stacks blocks.
Oh, okay, cool. Reject it, set it on fire. Is that the
Oh no, like the current idea of using the command line option is totally fine.
Okay, cool.
Do you want to talk about this in a PR? Evaluate PUX anchor as a command line option?
Sure. This just like adds a CLI command that basically evaluates whether or not a POX block would be chosen if the prepare phase ended at some specific block height instead of some other block height. And it allows you to get a measurement like of what the current agreement percentage is over the last prepare phase number of blocks. Yeah, this doesn't change the behavior of the node at all. So it should just be this additional command line option, which is really useful for obtaining metrics about the current state of the network. So,
yeah, that looked pretty cool. Do we just need one more reviewer for this, right?
yeah.
Cool. Any takers?
I will take a look.
Or I could take a look too.
Cool. Alrighty, Ludo, do you want to talk about the Puppet chain draft?
Sure. So it's basically yeah. The idea is to recycle the Bitcoinian control that we had in the past, and so you basically launch this tool the same way you would be like launching a Helium node,
Okay.
and you in the config you yeah, like describe the sequence of blocks and the behavior that you are expecting, and yeah, the controller will just follow the steps. So it's pretty useful if you want to reproduce like the flash blocks and this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I could see that being really useful with testing like the no UTXOs problem we've been seeing.
Yeah.
Have you been able to reproduce that problem using the Puppet chain?
Yes, but I haven't like be checking the RBF stuff with this tool. So yeah, I was using that for yeah, trying to prevent the cases where we are seeing two transactions on the same block, like two or n transaction. Like as of today, with the miner, you can see like the miner can commit a bunch of block commit on one block, which is something we want to avoid. I can reproduce this case with the Puppet chain. Yeah.
I see it's also in draft status. What still needs to be done with it?
I need to. So right now, I think I have one off by one issue. So if you like specify that you don't want any transaction for one block, I think it's gonna take the block before. So it's a bit weird. So I need to fix that, and then yeah, it's almost there. I just want to be successfully debugging stuff with that tool, and then I'll be committing that. Yeah.
All right, sounds good. Look forward to it. Pascal, do you want to talk a bit about the status of the miner?
I spent a lot of this week fixing my rebase. That was the rebase that was introducing the microblocks.
Okay.
There was more to it than met the eye. It is working, and especially I wasn't. Initially, I needed to work with a node that was also a miner, especially if you start from scratch, because there's a Genesis issue. Because my miner is not able to mine the Genesis because it cannot retrieve information from the node because there is no chain tip.
Mm-hmm.
So I got that working. So hopefully I can at least push some new stuff this week. But it's still like testing to be, because I test manually, I don't have automated testing. And I'll start testing in testnet as well. So, and I still have one more rebase to do. Hopefully it's not going to be as bad as the previous one.
Just slowing down now that we're in mainnet.
And the microblock is not the ideal solution yet, because I just need to send the microroute private key to the node to mine the microblock instead of doing it more interactively. But at least that was the poor man's solution to get something working. So finally I'm back in the saddle, so to speak.
Cool. Looking forward to seeing the rebase work. Yeah, I'm sorry that there's been a lot of changes since December, but I think
Yeah, that I mean that having a long running side thing is that's the name of the game there. So,
yeah.
but yeah, it's painful at times, but I'm getting there.
Cool.
And hopefully the code will be more stable now. Well, at least not major changes as much as we had. So I'll push the new code within a couple days.
Cool. Sounds good. Duwalker, I think you were asking about this issue earlier.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So I did try this out and I captured some logs. I think that we still need to rely on the transaction length as opposed to using a constant, because using this PR, I still managed to see this problem arise. Let me just see if I can.
Even if you put because you can, that PR, you can set up the lengths you want, right? Because I've been running with 253 for a week and I've not had any issues with this. So not that specific PR. I've got my own little hack on the side, and that definitely works for me.
Okay, so maybe that's the solution then. We just need to have bigger constants.
Because the highest I've seen is 252. I use 253, and that has worked for me. But if that doesn't work for you, there may be something else too. Then, but
I think it's a function of, and so I think this is partly a function of the fact that we're just assuming that transactions are a particular length. Nothing wrong with that inherently, but it does kind of mean that it's brittle in the face of like non-standard or less obviously used transactions. Like if I'm using like a multi-sig key to sign blocks, for example.
Oh yeah, that would definitely not work, or you need to use a higher value.
Yeah, taking the length of the transaction or something like that.
But I mean, using a higher value is just a few satoshis more.
But the thing is, though, like code needs to detect when that happens.
But yeah, doing an exact value would be best, but that's kind of tricky. So as if like you need to generate a transaction twice. Once with a fake value, and then you measure what it is, and then you redo it. I mean, maybe.
That's how most wallets work, I think. They just make the transaction twice.
But you never send the first one, but.
That's right. You just make it, and then you take the length, and then you update the fee and regenerate it with the new fee.
Right. Yeah. That may be the solution.
I don't know. Either way, we need to look at this a bit more, I think.
Good.
What's up?
Sounds good. Okay. Do we want to? Maybe raise the value, merge that to develop, and in parallel work on like getting the real size, so that at least we unblock miners.
But that's just the thing, though. We were doing that. We were taking the real size, and we're replacing it with a constant now.
Yeah, but
like right here.
It was the real size of the previous one, though, and it's not always the same value.
Right. So we would want to do this twice then. Just take the real size twice.
But doesn't this also lead to a potential problem? We do an estimation when we first broadcast the transaction.
Mm-hmm.
And if that estimation is larger than like the real size, then what ends up happening is you end up trying to do an RBF with a too low fee.
Right.
So if we do an estimate on the first broadcast, we should do the same estimate on RBFs.
So I'm sorry, I'm not quite parsing what that means here. You're saying that the size, we should estimate the same size, or at least we shouldn't allow the maximum size to decrease.
Correct. Like the TX fee needs to always be calculated using the same assumptions.
Yeah, that makes sense. So max TX len like should never decrease.
I don't think it should be used at all. Like the estimate when we first broadcast does not use last TX lane.
Well, attempt is going to be 0 on the first call to this. So your RBF fee is going to be 0 in the first place.
Right, but the TX fee won't be. And if your RBF fee uses a smaller, like if your RBF fee uses a smaller length estimate, then you end up with an RBF fee that's too small.
Correct.
And that's possible in the current version, like not this PR, that's possible. Because we first estimate the TX length.
But that's the thing though. This problem is still manifesting with this PR.
Oh.
Like I tried it out on the foundation miner and I captured logs here. So we still see the, the 500 error that we get from Bitcoin. Sorry, let me
So what value are you using?
Yeah, insufficient fee. We're using the same constants, 252 and whatever is up here. Yeah, 352 and 291. And looking at this, it's like it's a very small difference. It's like, you know, fractions of a tiny fractions of a Bitcoin. I think you might be onto something there, Aaron. I think it might be the fact that we just need to make sure that the RBF fee the fee rate per byte never decreases.
Yeah.
No matter how we solve this. I think that's not enforced currently. That's not enforced in this PR either. So maybe that's the fix we need to make.
Because it looks like it was assuming that increase would need to be 142 here, right? But then it suddenly went back to 0. Because I haven't seen that error and I was using 253 just to be on the safe side.
Yeah, but like I said, I've seen this error using just constants as well. The problem isn't the fee itself or the number of bytes. The problem is that the fee per byte can never decrease, and that's not being guaranteed in the code now or the code in this PR. But the fix is pretty straightforward. We just need to look at what the going fee rate is and just make sure that whenever we do the next attempt, that fee rate goes up. Moving on to in progress, if there's no other questions on the reviews in progress.
Is it because the RBF is actually changing the transaction size?
It could be. Because if you increase the fee, you could imagine a few corner cases where like the signature size goes up by 1 byte or goes down by a couple bytes.
Yeah.
In a more extreme case, you can imagine that your fee is now high enough, you need to tack on a new UTXO. Well, actually, if you have to do that, you can't even do RBF, so that's kind of immaterial. RBF requires you to use the same inputs.
I see. Okay.
Alrighty. Aaron, I think you were working on this issue here. Mempool transfer shouldn't admit from to to. Is this merge to develop?
I think it is, yes.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and close it then. Um, 1805 is still in progress. I guess we'll just have to if we have about 3 weeks to get this fixed, if it is the case that the upcoming POX anchor block is mined but never broadcasted. But that's unlikely to happen though. Should this remain in progress or should this be like backlogged, do you all think?
I think we talked about this the last time. My preference was that we close this issue since the infrastructure exists, and then we open new issues for specific tests that we want to capture and express in test ground and run through. And I think this issue was, to make sure that we have a test ground setup that we can actually use, which exists now.
Yeah, there aren't any such comments on the issue though that talk about specific tests we want to run yet, right?
No.
Okay. I'll go ahead and close. That's all right with everyone. Gavin's not here. So benchmarking harnesses for measuring cost analysis constants. Reed, how are we doing on this?
Yes, so this is kind of put on hold for the moment. I think we need to have, we touched on this a bit last week, but I think there needs to be some more discussion about the best way to actually go about measuring for some of these functions that are harder to isolate. So I did a bunch of work on this a few weeks ago. We kind of have like I have code that has like the harness in place, and we can use it for kind of some more basic functions. And then additionally, I did some work with a Python notebook to actually do like the estimation, like analyzing the data and doing the, doing kind of guessing the line and whatnot. So yeah, the framework for this is kind of in place, but there's some details that need to be figured out. I think maybe this should be, I don't know if we want to keep this in progress for now.
Okay, maybe like icebox it or something.
Yeah, what do you think, Aaron?
Yeah, I think probably icebox.
Okay. Come on. There. Let's see. There we go. All right. 1641.
I haven't done the rebase,
Okay.
but if I get like a good stopping point for the mining code, I'll do that.
Okay. We have wall mode merged in, so that might.
Yeah, I saw that. I'm pretty excited to actually try that. So.
Yeah, I'm super excited about that too. The node goes, the node's a lot more responsive with it now. New issues. Testnet bug, miner starts mining too early. I think this is fixed by Aaron's PR.
Yeah, there was just reopening an old one because I saw that happening on mainnet. So hopefully, yeah, that will address it.
Oh yeah, this is from July. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, it was closed, but since I saw that happen to a miner just restarting, it took him like 2 blocks to actually get back on the right height. So having some starting block in the future would take care of that if the miner operates correctly.
Yeah, something else catches up by then. So we'll just leave this open then until Aaron's PR merges. So this issue here just talks about the no UTXOs bug that shows up. I don't know what exactly causes it, but I'm pretty sure it is correlated to the missed block commit problem. Failure to find UTXOs is invariably coupled with a slew of missed block commits where the modulus is always off by 1. I captured a log from the Foundation's miner here, so we can just look at it in more detail. I opened this issue here to make, we have this compile time switch right now in the Stacks node called TX log, which will log all transactions in addition to storing them in their blocks in order to make them indexable. It's kind of like the TX index equals 1 feature in Bitcoin. I'd like to make that into a runtime setting, just because one thing I'm going to try to work on this week is implementing at least some analytics to help us figure out what causes transactions to get late or to get delayed in mining. If we can store the TX log and compare that to transaction arrivals in a mempool from different vantage points in the network, we should be able to figure this out. Is Hank on the call?
Nope.
So I guess this issue has to do with nonce arrival, with transactions arriving, 2 different transactions arriving with the same nonce. I think it's a quest for the, sorry, it's kind of a long issue. I haven't read it yet in full. I'm just reading it right now. I think it has something to do with like looking at whether or not a transaction is in the unconfirmed state or not. Alex, do you know anything about this?
I was just wondering, can you repeat the question again?
Yeah, sure. It's the issue that Hank opened about plausibility of fetching a nonces from the unanchored chain tip.
Oh, I don't have as much context on this, but I could see where the request is coming from. It would be easier for somebody to hit an API and just get the very latest nonce from the unanchored chain tip, so they can make easier transactions without having to deal with nonces and manually encrypting them.
Right. I guess what I'm trying to understand is what the difference is between this request and doing what he proposes here, which is just to get the unanchored chain tip and tack it onto V2 accounts, your address, and then pass the tip manually.
It's probably just convenience.
Okay.
I guess a partner would need to implement another API call and then this manual logic that could be just returned, I guess, in the account's endpoint.
Okay. I think we have an issue open for this already. I'll just pick one and run with that one.
Okay, cool. Sorry, I don't have much more context. I didn't create this issue.
Oh, no, it's all good. I'm just curious if there's anything more to it. Open this issue for networking to see if we can make it so that the burn chain indexer code can just listen for Bitcoin block announcements instead of trying to pull for them. I think Aaron looked into this in a bit more detail because the context of this was like, why are we missing block commits? It's probably not due to polling versus listening. I think, Aaron, you said something like 90% of missed block commits could not be explained by a lack of polling, something like that.
Yeah, like something like 90% of the missed Bitcoin blocks are basically like the average block time for missed Bitcoin blocks is around 60 seconds. Mm-hmm. And so most of them are greater than the 10-second polling interval that we currently have.
Right.
Whereas we have like this default setting for like wait before issuing the commit, which is 1 minute, which is far and away dominates that like 10 seconds polling interval. Like even if you found the Bitcoin block, you would wait for 60 seconds before even trying to issue a block.
Yep.
Yeah. So I think like addressing that is probably, or fixing that is probably the quick fix. But this is all related to like sort of other improvements to the miner in general.
Yeah, I think that might also be the fast driving Bitcoin blocks probably the cause of this no UTXOs issue here too.
I tried to change the polling time from 10 to 5. It didn't help. It still doesn't do it more than 10 seconds, every 10, 15 seconds anyway. So there's other things going on that prevent the node from getting the blocks faster.
Yeah, I think that the burn chain like polling is also like further limited by the relayer, like the miner thread's ability to keep up with it and stuff. Like I think there's like a lot of intertwined
yeah, probably that's probably on
weights.
Yeah, it takes like on the order of like to mine a block, you have to like, pull the transactions out, assemble them, send the Bitcoin transaction. That in turn is blocked on your ability to have the latest chain tip, which requires you to scan all your peers' inventories and then go find out if they have a block that they have that you don't, and then go download that and parse that. That I think takes on the order of, by the default configuration, that takes on the order of like a minute or so. I don't think you can make it much faster than 30 seconds, however, just because you're network bound in doing this. So maybe we just need to be more resilient in what happens if a Bitcoin block does arrive quickly. And I think Ludo's PR with the Puppet chain is going to help us a lot with that. Aaron, do you want to talk about this issue here? Mempool transaction propagation leads to slow to confirm transactions.
Sure. I think that what we're, what we're seeing here is just that like there are some transactions that are taking a while to confirm. But for most of these transactions that are taking a long time to confirm, like there's some other issue at work, like either nonces or the from and to address are equal to one another. So I think that really this is more like investigation is required here. So this is like related to that like TX log feature. Like we really actually just need to understand the propagation of transactions in our mempool and like how problematic it is. Like, are there transactions that aren't making it to miners, stuff like that?
Yeah, that's on my plate, I think, this week. Cool. I haven't assigned it to myself.
Can I ask a quick question? Aaron, you mentioned the other issues with same address or maybe different nonces and all that. Is there a way for us to maybe improve the behavior so that those transactions don't by default end up in the mempool and will never be processed?
So for addresses where the from and to are equal to one another, there is a change to the mempool that's like staged and developed. So whenever we do the next release, like they'll get a rejection very early about that. Nonces is harder to do at the mempool level because like the reason that you want to accept these like sort of out of order nonces is that if somebody wants to like stage 20 transactions without like waiting for each one to confirm iteratively, the mempool needs to support out of order nonces. So yeah, I think
right. That makes sense.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is there maybe a way to reject some of those transactions after a while and have an error message that might indicate why it was rejected? Because I feel like most of the transactions are just in the mempool and then being removed after a while, but never rejected actually. Is there maybe a way to think about the error behavior to make it more clear?
There might be, but again, it's pretty hard because right now we don't really even have an API for people to interact and like ask questions of the mempool. And so like where this error would be getting returned is like kind of an open question. Like,
yeah, and I think there are some broader implications as well, right? In a blockchain environment, miners can make localized decisions that are not sort of uniform or enforced by the protocol. And each of those choices could influence, what makes it into the mempool of a specific node. And so it's kind of hard to say, here is a list of rules that all mempools have to absolutely follow.
Yeah, mempool replication is historically a best effort thing in all blockchains.
Okay, well, maybe we need to deal with it somewhere downstream on the Explorer or something else, but something for later. Thanks for explaining all this to me. Appreciate that.
Alex, your point about transaction chaining being a problem is well taken. I think we actually were bit by this problem like last week sometime where there was like 60 outstanding transactions for this one address and it was missing like nonce 48 out of like chain of 80 transactions. And so they're all blocked waiting for the 48th transaction to arrive.
Yeah, exactly. That was a big issue.
Finding out when that happens, I think, is going to be like the interesting thing I'm working on this week and what we can do to alleviate this problem. Because it turns out that missing transaction 48, was in some nodes mempools, just not everybody's. But it wasn't in the miners. Like not enough miners had the 48th transaction. So they couldn't find any other transactions. They were all waiting for the 48th one to arrive. And that would be what an anti-entropy pool would an anti-entropy protocol would fix. It would try to find out, oh, hey, transaction 48 is rare in the mempool. Let's go ahead and propagate it.
Okay. Cool. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Just moving on real quick here. I think we talked about this last week, but I don't know if we talked about this issue right here. Alex, do you want to just talk about it briefly? Revoke delegate stacks transaction does not complete.
Let's see. Can you open up the issue? Trying to navigate the screen here. That actually works now. I tested this 3 times over the weekend and the revoked transactions worked. I think there was something related to other issues before the mainnet launch because I was testing it back then 14 days ago, looks like. This works. I'm assuming I can close it out.
Cool. Can we go ahead and do that then?
Yeah, you can just close it. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, glad. I would have been scared if that wasn't working. I think that's it for our new issues. Like everything else we talked about last time, unless there's any ones that I've missed and someone wants to bring up.
I don't know if it's a question of issues, but I think it'll be useful to just quickly chat together as a team to make sure that the highest priority items are reflected in the backlog for this coming week. So for instance, the anti-entropy protocol for mempool, Jude, is that something that you think you'll be able to start working on this week, or is that coming later? I don't know if I think we have an issue for that somewhere, but I haven't seen it.
We do.
Um,
I don't know where it is, but I can go put it in the backlog.
Okay. And
Um,
then, sorry, go ahead.
Bit of question though, what's more important, the anti-entropy protocol or the fix to 1805? Because that can become relevant really fast depending on how the next POX reward cycle goes.
Yeah. Let's see. I mean, that's mostly a question, or that question is more germane if we think that it's blocked on just you being, able to do both of those things, right? If you can parallelize those efforts, then it becomes a non-issue.
Okay, I mean, I don't think that, so the anti-entropy protocol, I think it's greenfield, so anyone can start working on that. I have a pretty big patch I'm working on for 1805, so that's probably less easily sent away from me.
Okay.
So maybe I should finish 1805 first and then finish the mempool, or let someone else take the mempool problem. What do y'all think?
That sounds reasonable to me. I don't know. I'm curious to hear from others.
So I think that the next step for the mempool is really obtaining metrics about the mempool.
Yeah.
And that I think could be done by lots of people. Whereas like actually implementing the changes in the networking code, like Jude is probably going to be 10 times faster than the next person.
Okay, so we can break up the work to at least get some deeper stats in what's happening on the mempool.
Yeah, because that'll also tell us how huge of a problem this is right now.
Okay.
Because like just looking at like what we've seen so far in the mempool, like far and away, yeah, I don't know. I like still haven't seen a transaction that was actually stalled because of the mempool propagation and not because of something else. So
yeah, that's fair. Okay, can we open a new issue then to just like track the metrics that we want to capture from mempool, and so we can separately triage that work.
Sure. Do that after me.
Then let's see the other class of issues. I think from a miner perspective are around. It's like some combination of every time a miner starts or they have to restart the miner, like a bunch of bad things can happen. And so the ability to reuse the chain state or have the working directory actually be sort of well supported, that's one potential way to address this. Another potential way, not to address like this particular problem, but maybe useful property to have is whether some types of properties can be adjusted at runtime as opposed to only reading the config when the miner first starts. So like being able to dynamically adjust some properties. I'm not saying that we need to kind of orchestrate them in exactly this way. We can kind of, but that's to me like that's one area where there's a lot of benefit to miners. So at least one of those things I would like to get some progress on. I think it'll be good to have, whether it's the working directory or maybe dynamic configuration or something else.
Well, to start using the existing working directory, we would need to have a clean shutdown code working.
Exactly. Yeah.
But that shouldn't be too terrible now that we have the chain coordinator. I think it's just a matter of like closing a few relay channels inside the node, and then
that is my hope too. But I think we've all been kind of throwing around the hypothesis that it's not a ton of work. But I would like someone to actually take a look at it and say, okay, here's all the threads that need to cleanly shut down. This is what the signal handling needs to look like. I agree. It seems like it should. It's a fairly tractable work stream.
So just divvying up these responsibilities. If I'm going to be taking 1805, how do we want to divvy up mempool metrics, reloading configuration at runtime, and using an existing working directory?
Oh, to be clear, I don't think we need to say we're committing to reloading configuration at runtime. I think if we address, reusing working directory, like that's both of those things don't need to happen exactly all at once, or the reloading configuration was just a thing that I threw out. I don't know if that's the best way to go about this.
Yeah, it's not like minor nodes are like web servers and need to be constantly on. So if we can just
And
give
also pertaining to restarting miners, I've got some code that works to save the registration key and reload it at startup, so you don't need to go through that phase again.
Sweet.
That was pretty straightforward.
Yeah, it's definitely a problem right now. Do you want to open a PR for that, Pascal?
For now, it's in my code, but yeah, I could. Well, I could make it part of the real code. Yeah, although it would. For now, I store a JSON with like 4 values because you need to save the private keys, the public key, although you could regenerate, and then the block heights and the VT index of that transaction, and then you just stuff it back into the keychain, and that seems to be working enough.
Okay, let's also just maybe hear from Ludo, Reed. Like what do you guys have on your plate? I think the other kind of big bucket that Ludo was looking at is exposing more information about stacking, about miners, so that we can have sort of a richer display and more transparency with what's happening on the Explorer. I think there's a bunch that we can do there. So yeah, let's hear from folks just to get a sense of the bandwidth available, and then we can talk about relative prioritization if we don't have enough cycles in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, sure. I can start because I think I have to hop out a bit early because I have an interview coming up. So I think I have a solid amount of bandwidth right now. The main thing I'm kind of looking at is getting that the integration test PR that I have currently up through and addressing any concerns about that. I've been kind of interested in maybe pursuing some of the REPL work that Ludo was working on a bunch of weeks ago. I don't know if that is something we think is super important right now, but I've gotten to write a couple of Clarity contracts recently, and it's definitely left a strong desire for some better tooling around that for me. So that's kind of what I'm thinking about at the moment.
Okay, Ludo?
So yeah, so on my end, I started working on exposing stacking and mining informations last week, but I did put that on hold with the RBF stuff. So yeah, so I think that priority should be making sure that the no UTXO and the RBF stuff is behind us. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I think one thing that is still not clear to me is, I mean, we keep talking about this minor refactoring, and on the other hand, we are also talking about adding some more features to the current one. And I just feel like at some point it's gonna backfire.
It's like crashing down on us.
Yeah, I think that we're like approaching like complexity collapse on the Neon node.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the right answer then. Just put it to the ground and rebuild it.
So yeah, so Diwakar, I agree with you on this new feature, but I'm just afraid on just piling some new stuff on the current code. Unless we think that it's only, I mean, if we think that these new features are going to be implemented at the chance coordinator level, then that's fine. But yeah, if it's in the Neon node, yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
I definitely hear the concern, but I think we need to apply a bit more rigor to be able to make that decision. So I think I would love to hear input from you guys. If the sense is that making the code such that we can reuse working directory safely will require a ton of changes that will make a future refactoring of Neon Node even more complex. And if it's a few weeks of work, either way, or something like that, then we can actually have a meaningful discussion in how to make this decision. So yeah, at the very least, I think whoever has time or is already in this kind of code base to take a look and weigh in with some opinion and some information, then we can. I think the concern is real, and I definitely get that.
I kind of get the feeling that a lot of at least some of the complexity in the Neon node arises from the fact that some context might be missing from Blockstack lib. Like, I think most of the configuration settings, for example, could probably be inside the Blockstack lib crate. Graceful shutdown should probably be handled by Blockstack lib, and that should just be like a function that the Neon node can call. I kind of wonder, like, what's like a minimum viable Neon node look like, and what sorts of things are in the Neon node just because we didn't put them in Blockstack lib. Maybe this is a conversation we can have at the next architecture meeting or something.
Yeah, I mean, there is. I think if we start to make like a wish list of just like code improvements and refactoring, there's probably like a very long list of things that we need to start taking a crack at. I think my immediate goal is to make sure that we have something that addresses the biggest pain points from miners' perspective. So we have some breathing room that gets created when we can start to tackle some of these other things. Okay, we're coming up on time here. So we can maybe follow up offline on this refactoring question. The other thing I wanted to ask was, we have a bunch of really useful, important PRs that are already staged in the develop branch. I would, we should publish a release soon so that miners can actually run with those changes. Unless we want to encourage people to, always build from source, which is fine for some people, but not ideal. So question is, what are we, like, are there any PRs you want to block in new release on? Or we think that there is a healthy chunk of PRs in there that we can bundle and release, let's say today?
So I would say that the mine at block height PR,
yeah,
I would block on, because like otherwise we're going to tell everybody to restart this new release. And
yes, yes. And then do we want to change the default for wait for microblocks?
Can't hurt.
No.
Or I mean, set it to,
Yeah.
even if you don't want like an aggressive value, but at least something less than 5.
Yeah, we could set it to like 45 seconds. I think like 45 seconds is like just an easy like, yeah.
Okay, so let's do that. Anything else?
So quick question around this improvement. So what kind of improvements are we talking about? Like you mentioned the fact that we were above 80 with that. Like how above 80?
Oh yeah, let me share the this spreadsheet.
Are you putting it into the group chat?
Yeah, I'll put it in the group chat.
Thanks, then I can share it on my screen.
And then you can open it, yeah.
That's a good point. We should probably make sure this is all working right. We want POX to start. And we're working.
Yeah, you're gonna get that graph eventually.
There we go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Hey, this is
and that's and that actually it cuts off a little bit early. Like you can see there's data now from this morning, and through the weekend we've basically been hovering around 90%.
Cool.
Yeah, so it looks like kind of two things happened. So one is that prior to like block 667053, there were a ton of block commits that were on super old data. Because like if you look at that yellow line, that's like missed blocks plus the agreement amount. And so if the entire problem is just that we're missing block commits, like we have these like missed Bitcoin blocks, then that line should just stay at 100% all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
But that clearly didn't happen here, though.
Yes.
We had some orphans.
Yeah. And so, yeah, you can also see there's like some analysis about like what the average commit distance is for block commits.
That's further down.
It's up there. It's just like a table of cumulative.
This right here. So what is it for equal to 1? 23.7%. I'm a little curious.
What do you mean?
What is that? What does equal to 1 mean? Does that mean like you hit the block you intended to hit?
Right. That means that every single block commit in that block was mining off the previous Bitcoin block.
Oh, I see. This is all the block commits in a given Bitcoin block.
Yes, and it's their parent block pointer. And it's also a float because it's an average.
Okay, so how?
That's why, yeah, there's like, that's why it doesn't, like, it's only sums to 1 with the greater than 1 and equal to 1. Like you see a difference between greater than or equal to 2 and greater than 1.
What's the window size here? Because if what this tells me is like 3 and 4 block commits are invalid. Is that true? Like they're not building on the longest chain.
Well, it depends who's winning though.
Right. I
Because
mean,
if the stronger miners are closer to 1, then it's not as big a deal as this shows.
Right. It's also not percentage of block commits. It's percentage of blocks with an average commit distance.
okay, I guess I can just think more about what that means. I'm not
Yeah.
quite seeing.
So you look at a given Bitcoin block, you look at all of the commits and their parent block pointer,
Okay.
you take the average, and you get a number for that block. So like a block that has an average of 1.1 will fall into that 76% bucket.
Oh, I see. That means you just had like a small number of block commits, let's say, that had a parent block pointer that's greater than 1.
Yeah, so like even if you had a single block commit that had a parent block pointer of 2.
I see. Your average would be greater than 1. Yeah.
Yes.
So this is actually pretty good then. This means 1 in 4 Bitcoin blocks have block commits that are always building on the parent block.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. That's a little bit less scary. That's not the way I interpreted it originally. But looking at this graph here, this means that we're pretty much good to go for POX if we can keep this blue line here above 80, which is the red line, right?
Yes.
Sweet. Is there anything else you want us to take away from the graph and the chart here?
I don't think so. Yeah, you can
I think
also
this was in
see.
the context of Ludo's question, right? About what improvements are we trying to get into this next release?
Yeah, so if POX is working, I think we should be pretty cautious with what with merging. Yeah, yeah. I don't know. I would be super cautious with. I don't know.
Does anyone know how many tokens have been stacked so far? Is there a way to tell easily?
I think that's the issue right here that Luda is going to be working on, exposing stacking information.
Yeah, you need to do a read-only function call.
Okay, well, that's even easier. So if things look pretty stable on the POX front, like I guess that is a good question that Ludo raised. How much do we want to risk upsetting that? Do we have like an error buffer, like a window of time in which we can revert changes and not risk POX activating? I think we have maybe 400 blocks before that happens.
Right. Didn't the reward cycle end in like, oh, okay. Yeah. I don't know what the Bitcoin block height is for the next reward cycle start.
Yeah, it's 2100 plus Genesis, which is 666050.
Got it.
So 668150 is when the next reward cycle starts. We need to
So
have it
minus 100 is the prepare phase.
right. So 668050, which is about yeah, 400 blocks away. So if
Got
you
it.
like, it'll happen this week. Walker, how scared are you feeling?
Sorry, I was trying to eat my lunch while I was on the call.
All good.
Let's see. So the concern here is that some of these changes might have some unintended impact on the anchor block selection
Correct.
that we have not yet seen.
Yeah, we have about 400 blocks to revert the change if we were to merge it right now.
I mean, you've been running most of this code on the foundation miner, so I would say you probably have the most insight into how this is actually behaving.
I mean, it seems to be working, but I'm not really like, the foundation isn't being very aggressive in its mining right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, for some of the miners who, let's say, have ended up wasting BTC because their miners started to mine too early or running into these fees issues, I think some of these fixes are real and meaningful. And so I would err on the side of packaging up a release and trying to get it in the hands of miners as soon as possible, and then monitor closely if we need to revert for any reason. Pushing it off just seems like we'll find ourselves in a similar situation. Like once POX actually gets going, then we'll be even more hesitant to roll out these changes. So I would say we should get a release out soon.
Yeah. I guess we could do the release without the update to the from 60 seconds to 45 seconds.
Sure. Yeah, if that's the thing, and I mean, people can still tweak it, right? Like it's not that.
Yes.
That's.
Yeah.
And even just one miner running with that would actually give us the benefit.
I'm running with 30 seconds at the foundation, so.
Yeah. So.
Okay.
There you go.
Sure. So we can leave that. Is it 60 seconds? I thought Jude mentioned that it was even higher.
I thought it was higher. Maybe I'm misremembering, but
I mean, if it's 60,
30
we
seconds
can
right
still
now,
leave
I'm
it.
seeing no problems. In fact, I'm seeing good things.
So if the default is something reasonable, I think we can leave it, and we can document that if people want to try a lower setting, they can do so. Doesn't need to necessarily make it into the release if we want to minimize the risk there. But then for everything else, yeah, let's try to get release out soon.
Okay, we can do that.
Should we prepare like a change log to?
Yeah, that would be great.
Miners that, I mean, this. What's new in this release? Like,
so there's the wall mode. So that's like a database improvements. But importantly, that PR also changes the database schema.
Wait, it does?
Yes. There's like a new column in
right,
the
yeah.
sortition DB. Which, yeah, that's something to alert miners about.
You will need to blow away your working directory.
Correct.
Yeah, that's a pretty significant change that people need to be aware of.
Well, you can't start with a working directory anyway, so.
It still works 90+% of the time.
It's not going to work this time, guarantee it.
But here it's not going to work. No, that's like a guaranteed failure. So
yeah. So if we merge in Aaron's PR of mine at block height, that should at least make it so miners aren't wasting Bitcoin.
And I think we should try to merge in Ludo's PR as well after we incorporate, with the changes that we discussed today. I think that's also an important one.
Right, as long as we can get it working though.
Wait, Jude, are you saying that we won't be able to build enough confidence in that PR for release today?
What I'm saying is that if you're talking about the replaced by fee PR, I tested it on the foundation miner and it's still not working. So we need to figure out why that's the case and then ship that PR if you want to get it into this release at all. We're pretty sure we know why. And that's just that we need to make sure that the fee rate never decreases, no matter what we do.
Okay. Let's say we're unable to, I mean, it takes longer to test that out. Is there a workaround that miners can use? I know, Pascal, you had mentioned that you were just, using a higher number of the estimated size. Like that's a config option anyways.
That's not a config option. I had a code.
Oh,
It's a
really? I thought that-
trivial code change, but I replaced the calculation that he was using the last TX len by 253, which is overkill in some cases, but it seems to have worked.
Okay.
So I don't know what's different. I can take a look at Ludos PR because it looks pretty similar, except it's using a configuration value instead of what I was doing. So
Okay. Well, we're way over time. I definitely need to hop off. I imagine other people do as well. So happy to take this discussion offline. I think what the next release should incorporate like some way for miners to work around this fee issue, whether it happens to be Ludos PR in the or some other solution. Yeah, I don't know if it makes sense to have a release that doesn't include a fix for that.
Okay, we can work on that offline.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
That's good. Thanks for humoring us all going over. And stop the share.